Hey everyone.
Hello everyone. Indeed. Yes. Very special live stream today because I am joined by a self-taught coder and now a senior developer with 6 years of experience.
Probably 7.
Really?
Yeah.
Time flies.
I've counted for ages.
Not bad. So yes, Michael knows what it's like to learn to code on your own.
Yes.
And to break into the tech industry, as they say. And he has hands-on experience of all stuff that's going down in tech at the moment, which is why I've invited him on. So you can ask your questions, anything you want to know about starting a career in tech, learning to code, finding a job, ChatGPT, tech layoffs, whatever it may be. Yes, the floor really is yours, the viewers. Thank you all for joining. Look at you all in the chat.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on the chat as much as possible to answer all your questions. Yeah, and as Leanne already said, I've been working for a little while. My position is currently called senior engineer, and I also have spent a very long time kind of learning with Scrimba, teaching with Scrimba. So, and kind of, Leanne and I were even reviewing like the very early stages of the career path when it was about to be born. We were kind of looking into it. Obviously had a lot of iterations since the very early stages. So, we've been kind of a lot of our experience have gone into work with Scrimba. So, and it's a great pleasure to me to be sharing constantly with the community as well. So hopefully, if you have any questions, we'll be here to ask them.
Yes, quite. So do put your questions into the chat so we know we're answering the things you want to know. That's why we do these things live.
Yes.
The first question on everybody's lips at the moment, Michael. Sammy Ab, does ChatGPT mean the end of software engineering?
Yeah, I think a lot of stuff is usually considered the end of software engineering. I don't think so. So, like, long story short, no, it's not. I think it will make your job a lot easier. Yeah.
How so?
The kind of like Stack Overflow has cut, there used to be a lot of trivia that people would have to remember to code. Or if you don't remember something, you have to open the manual for the language, look up a method or something.
Can you imagine? I've seen pictures of those manuals that are like this big. Yeah. You just have to go through it.
I remember when my first ever experience in coding was probably like at school or something. Pascal, Turbo Pascal, I think it was called. I don't remember much about that at all. But more or less in adulthood, it was like a university and we had Fortran 86. And there was no IntelliSense or anything. You have to, I don't know why they made us code in MS-DOS. So there was
That was my horrified face.
There was no editors or anything.
Well, was there an alternative though?
Probably, but nobody has shown it to us. We had these computer science just lessons where you just code in TXT. It was all black and white. And it's Fortran 86, and we were doing matrices multiplication because I was doing engineering degree in mechanical engineering.
So are you saying then that the difference between software engineering now, or 6 months ago, and software engineering with ChatGPT will be similar sort of grade of difference?
Probably,
you're just not doing the manual, boring,
a lot of stuff. Yeah, I remember when I was learning to code and somebody showed me in the tutorial what IntelliSense looks like. I was like, whoa! So you don't have to remember method names? And it was mind blowing. And then obviously Stack Overflow and stuff. So you have to remember less and less and less. So it's mostly about adding value. You're thinking about business cases and you're thinking about how the company that you work for actually works and how to translate those processes into code. And you're much less worried about minutiae of the language and stuff like that. Although a lot of technical skills will still be useful, and ChatGPT will never help you with that. Knowing how databases work or knowing how to optimize certain things. Although I think ChatGPT can definitely help you answer a lot of these questions, just like Stack Overflow. So I tend to think about it as
hopefully less snarky than Stack Overflow.
Yes, it's super friendly. It's now super friendly because people have managed to tweak it to be very friendly. Think about it that way.
So it's taking out the kind of back-breaking work and the boring bits, freeing you up to be more creative, you reckon?
I think so. You'll be able to focus on things that matter a little bit more, rather than get bogged down in bike shading.
So Dan asks, maybe a reduction in the professionals needed for software development. So do you think that's true? There'll be fewer software engineers?
I don't think there is anyone who can honestly answer this question to you. If they speak about this with confidence, they probably don't know what they're talking about. From GPT that we have so far, I don't think so. So I think you'll be fine.
Do you think the role will change from what it is now? People are talking about prompt engineers, aren't they?
I think that's I think prompt engineers is more like professional Googlers, that kind of thing. Like people who can put queries correctly. Maybe at some point it would be very, very important to do so, but I don't think it's going to last because a lot of these models want to make sure that you actually don't have to be very clever with prompting it. So I'm pretty sure they will try to reduce the barrier required for a quality result.
But in terms of needing fewer software engineers, my feeling is, yes, you can ask ChatGPT how to make whatever, but you do need to understand what it's doing for two reasons. One, in case it doesn't quite do exactly what you want and you need to change it. And two, so you're not doing something potentially dangerous. If it gives you inner HTML and you don't know the risks of you using inner HTML, then that could be a big
I think it's kind of like with self-driving cars. A lot of people say it's tomorrow, and it's been very just like that for tomorrow. I don't think at this moment in time, I don't think we're there.
Okay, so as Joshua says, does it mean the end of writing syntax and more system design? I
think so. Yeah, I think you will need to be able to focus on understanding systems more, and probably kind of generally within tech career, people focus on system design a little bit later on in the career. So like maybe even mid-level developers are not that expected to understand these kind of things, but from seniors it is kind of expected. But I think it's moving closer and closer to juniors and stuff like that, because syntax is less and less of a barrier. So you will be focusing more and more on maintaining systems, creating systems, and stuff like that. Yeah.
That sounds exciting.
Exactly. It's much more interesting than debating push and pop or whatever.
Yeah, or spending hours finding a bug which ends up being something really stupid. Yeah. Good stuff. On to another topic. Paul O. How important is LinkedIn for finding a tech job?
I think it's pretty important. I found my first ever job on LinkedIn, and maybe I think it's like half and half. I found half of my jobs on LinkedIn and half of my jobs on Twitter. It's it depends. So to me personally, I would say it's 50% important.
How did it work finding a job on Twitter then? Because obviously LinkedIn, it's partly built for that, but with Twitter, that's interesting.
Yeah, so with Twitter, it's for example, I found Scrimba through Twitter, and then I met Pear through Twitter, and the way I'm doing this right now is basically through Twitter. But I would say like my current role right here is I was following one person who was then recommending the current company, and I looked into it. I had to chat to him about it in DMs, and then kind of decided to apply for a job. So, and I definitely did not see it. Maybe it was advertised on LinkedIn, but I'm not sure. I don't think I have seen it.
Interesting. Yeah, because I found my job through Twitter. So that wasn't really ever advertised. So that is a bit of a hack, really, of how you might be able to get jobs and beat the competition.
The thing is that with companies like Scrimba, it's very tricky to advertise jobs as well. Like, unless it's development and stuff like that. But like what we do, or like a lot of our teachers and stuff, they were not really advertised. It's mostly like we got to know each other, and we did some bits and bobs, and then kind of it grew into a more collaborative thing to do. So a lot of these roles are kind of similar as well. You might do a little bit of work for somebody, but then they don't have enough capacity or opportunity to give you something full time. So you might as well, kind of like consulting, freelancing for somebody until it grows into something a little bit larger.
Very interesting. So whichever route you take, LinkedIn or Twitter or anything else?
Yeah, I think social media is definitely very helpful there. I can definitely see people getting involved like that on TikTok or whatever, but I'm not on TikTok. I don't really understand the dynamics. I don't understand the app, so it's hard to say. But if it works for you, it works for you.
Yeah, interesting. Lots of ways to engage with companies that you want to work with. I guess that's the main takeaway, engage.
Yeah, or, people call it with like slimy word networking. And that's kind of all it is, just talk to people, and eventually, something comes up to it.
I feel like networking puts people off because it sounds so
like you have to
corporate and difficult, and like you have to have some kind of skill to it, whereas really it is just talking to people. Yeah,
that's all it is. Go to meetups and stuff like that. So, one of the jobs that I found is basically I was following a couple of people on Twitter, and they recommended a conference. And then I went to that conference, and one of the talks was my future manager. I was quite interested in what he had to say, so then I kind of like went into look into like what the company is about. I think they had the job advertised, and basically, I applied, and then we had a conversation. I mentioned that I was in one of his talks. We had a chat about it, and that was kind of like one of the things that convinced them to hire me as well.
Yeah, it's kind of like puts your name on top of the pile if they recognize you.
Yeah, exactly, because like I asked a couple of questions during the talk, and it seemed like it became a little bit memorable, so it helps.
Yeah, lovely. On to another question. I want to know about remote work and open source projects. What's the future into it in the coming years?
Well, what's the future into it in the coming years? I think it's kind of here. Like, remote work is probably as prominent as in-office work. Or
do you think that people are moving towards getting people to go back into the office, or is remote work still happening?
I think big companies do want people back in the office, but there is like somewhat a conspiracy theory, I suppose, that it's just a very sneaky way to try people to leave jobs because they don't want to fire you. They just want you to leave before.
And they know that people don't want to come back to the office.
Yeah, and they kind of say everyone goes back to the office, so there is a natural...
Instead of to pay off the redundancy type
of thing. There is a natural amount of people that will just say, nah, I'm okay, I'm not doing this. So there is a little bit of that, but I'm pretty sure that if once we are back into somewhat better economical conditions, this will be a massive perk back, and people will undoubtedly let go of a lot of these hiccups. But then again, big corporations, there is always an argument that offices is an expense, and big corporations, they kind of have to have an office regardless. So they have to bear that expense. Like Apple is not going to abandon their London offices, or Google. They have it. They might abandon their less prominent offices in other countries, but New York, LA, or San Francisco, they'll not leave there.
Well, Twitter has, hasn't it?
Twitter is very separate.
Less said about that, the better. What about open source then?
And open source is kind of, I think open source is all remote. I can't think of a single project that is like in office open source project. Everyone is working constantly remote, and the future into that, I don't know. I don't think I'm the most knowledgeable person on the open source dynamics, so I'll probably just leave that part because I don't know.
Thank you for the question. Pele is looking for a change of career from football, I guess. What has been your most challenging project to date? How did you navigate through any obstacles that arose?
Interesting. What has been your most challenging project to date, and how did you navigate through obstacles that arose? I don't know. I don't particularly think I had. I had a lot of very interesting projects, but I can't really say one of them was the most challenging, because most projects are challenging in their own way, and it's very hard to rank. It's like saying which experience was the most painful, and sometimes it's very hard to compare because pain is very different depending on circumstances.
Well, any that spring to mind. I guess really the question is asking how do you tackle difficulties that arise when you're coding?
Yeah, so it depends obviously on various, some projects you kind of work on your own on the project, and the difficulty there is you don't have anyone else to have as a sounding board to double check your thinking. Some projects are just really large and there are too many people involved and it's hard to coordinate, so all the different pain points are very different. But navigating through those obstacles, I think kind of the North Star is the where you want to be. What is the project trying to achieve, and make sure that maybe not daily but weekly you're checking in to ensure that you're moving in that direction. And I think that kind of helped me to kind of stay sane throughout whatever happens to the project. I always try to keep an eye on what needs to be achieved and get there eventually.
One of my colleagues has a very good phrase which sounds apt for this, which is, does it make sense that we're doing this? Because sometimes that you get yourself wrapped up into doing something, and then after about 3 days, you suddenly realize it was a complete rabbit hole to fall down and you shouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
Stop and ask yourself that on a regular basis if something's taking a long time.
Yeah, I think
saved me a lot of time.
I think sorry, I'm not entirely sure, but I think it would be nice if you clarify what do you mean by challenging? Hardest, most difficult, most moving parts, most annoying, try to define challenging there. And it was quite nice.
I read it as getting stuck, when you don't know how to do something, but you've got to do it. How do you approach that?
I sometimes try to reach out to other people and just, rubber duck the problem through it and just see where we end up. Because sometimes you are stuck not because you really don't know what to do, but because you have a lot of options, but none of them seem that appealing. So it helps you to narrow down on the least unappealing option.
I think also explaining the problem, especially if you're writing it down, can help you to think through the steps of what you need to do. And sometimes even just doing that solves it.
Yeah, correct.
Yes. Joshua, do you think the current tech industry environment will have an impact on the hiring of junior developers?
Current tech industry environment? Well, yeah, there is a lot of... I would say there's a very interesting part to the tech industry where we have seen a lot of layoffs, obviously, in big tech, and small companies feel much more pinched because people raise money and then they need to ensure that that money they have in the bank lasts them until basically interest rates go back to zero. Well, that's kind of the hope. And how long it takes, we don't really know. But a lot of tech companies, middle-sized tech companies, and to be honest, every company is a kind of tech company. Everyone hires software engineers. Your car company hires software engineers. Or walk around the house, have a look into what you have. It's quite likely, your fridge manufacturer or your washing machine manufacturer, everyone hires software engineers. And some companies might not be that particularly impacted. For example, your local government job, your local council, they hire software engineers. And all of those could be decent first places to be hired to, as a junior role. So look into that. And to be honest, I don't think our local council has noticed any difference in software engineering hiring, because to them, they had like 3 or 5 developers, and they still have 3 or 5 developers. And if somebody goes somewhere or retires, they'll just hire someone else.
So do you think, there's another question about this actually. Allow me to find it.
Yeah. Basically what I'm trying to say is like there is a lot of these notion of like really attractive tech jobs. And yes, there are less of them, but there are a lot of very, very lucrative and boring sounding tech jobs that are still out there. And there are plenty of them that have not really felt any difference in the market whatsoever, because they're kind of not impacted by the same dynamics as most traditional tech jobs.
Interesting. Yes. I couldn't find the question I had in mind, so I'll go to another one. Andre,
yeah.
How important is having a good commit history on GitHub or GitLab, if you prefer, when applying for jobs?
I think for a first junior role, I think it would be very important. I think it would be useful. Yeah. I know that a lot of people, especially on Twitter, there is like, don't judge a person by commits and stuff like that. And I agree with it. Personally, I would not really look that much into it. But it would definitely help if you had a busy looking GitHub. Yeah. Because it's like you have been coding before I have seen your CV. So that gives me some expectation that you are practicing, that kind of stuff, and not, this is not an accidental application for you. I think further into your career, it makes less and less and less sense, because people, the more senior they get, the more glue work they kind of do. So it might not track as well. But for a junior role, I think it's important.
So what does a good commit history look like then? Because you can get the green squares every day just by, changing one word in a...
Yeah, you're working on something. It's like, obviously I would look at green squares first, and if they're empty, then that kind of tells everything you need to know. Well, not like everything, but it tells you that you were not particularly coding that much, maybe. So I would need to dig further and find somewhere like, do you have a portfolio? Do you have this? Do you have that? Or while on your GitHub, I see a lot of squares. So now I just need to verify, have you rigged those squares, or have you actually coded? And with that, I'll just scroll through the history of your commits and stuff and see where you have contributed, what you have contributed, that kind of stuff. And it doesn't really matter. Like if you were contributing to your portfolio every day, that would be great. Yeah, I would say fair enough. Awesome. You were coding.
Sounds good. Quack. I have been programming for years without a job. Should I quit it?
Oh, interesting. I would say that it probably really depends. You need to look. I don't think you would quit as such. Like when you say for years without a job, does that mean like you were applying but were unsuccessful? If so, how many applications you did? When did you do them? How long have you been applying for? It also depends on your location, because like if we, for example, live in rural Wales, if somebody from rural Wales applies to a job in San Francisco or something, they can be making hundreds of thousands of applications and probably not really succeed, because there are too many barriers that you have to go through. Like the time zones are very different.
Not always a problem, though.
Yeah, it's not always the problem, but they kind of all add up, like the time zones, the not being able to easily go into the job office if needed, that kind of stuff. So like looking closer to your locality for a junior job, usually more helpful. But then also if you're looking, like we live in rural Wales, how many tech jobs are there in rural Wales? So there is also that. So I would probably look into those things. And if you were applying, maybe look into the CV. Is that the best optimized CV that you can have? are you showcasing what you can do the best way possible, or is it like just a blank page CV, no link to anything? So it's very hard for a hiring manager to determine if you were coding or not. And because they have a lot of CVs, probably people don't spend enough time to actually do the investigation. And it's kind of on you to save them time from doing that investigation.
Yeah, I think the thing is, before you quit, have a look at where it is in the hiring process that you're falling off. So are you not getting any callbacks to begin with? In that case, perhaps it's your CV or your LinkedIn or cover letters if you're writing them. That's the problem. If you are getting callbacks and going to interviews, but then not getting the job, is it interview skills you need to improve, or maybe technical skills if you've had a technical interview? So find out what's going wrong and tweak the process there, I would say.
Yeah, definitely.
Or maybe it's just that you're not doing enough applications.
Yeah,
in which
maybe.
Case, I'll be handy.
Maybe. If you, for example, get rejected at an interview stage, like, for example, you were given a take-home test and you didn't complete it, then just ask why not. Like, maybe the test needs to be done a little bit better. Maybe you need to brush up on your basics, that kind of stuff. It all depends.
Yeah, always ask for feedback. I would say you might not get it because people are busy, but sometimes you will get feedback, and it might be really useful and tell you what you need to focus on to get further the next time.
Yeah.
But anyway, best of luck to you, Kwaku. Blake.
Yeah.
I want to switch careers.
Mm-hmm.
I've got 15 years of experience in automotive manufacturing. That sounds a bit similar to you. I think a lot of the skills like problem solving will transfer. How can I best show that on my resume?
Ooh, interesting. I would probably say on your resume, you can just list impact that you have had in your job. So, like, just normal CV stuff, and then try to link how it would be transferable to software engineering. For example, debugging, improving processes, creating something. I think all of that will be transferable experience. Working on large projects, delivering on time, that kind of stuff. So in your case, I think a lot of these skills are very easily transferable. So it's mostly about, can you code at least a little bit? And if you can, then you can find your first job. Yeah.
Good stuff. I'm going to speed up a bit to ask the next question.
Yeah.
Where do you see the line between experienced senior engineer versus staff/principal?
Oh, wow. Okay. I think line, I'll probably step even further back. The line through all of these job titles is simply how much more responsibility you get. So, junior code, you're responsible for your little patch. Mid-level developer, you're responsible for a little bit for the junior and for yourself. Senior, you're responsible for, project level or product level. And then staff and principal, you're more responsible for the whole, section, or maybe even entire company, depending on the size of the company. So it's the area of responsibility for technical excellence, you can call it. That's right. And in that way, it's basically like, how can you optimize for things that your business cares about? Like, as a junior, it would be a little bit tricky because you don't really know how to leverage a lot of things and your skills. And the more and more senior you become, the more and more you know how you can do very little to have as much impact as possible on a bottom line for the company. And it could be anything. It could be like bringing more money or saving a lot of money. Hiring the best engineers, that kind of stuff. It's all, throughout the whole variety of different things that you can be doing.
Okay, thank you.
But yeah, I think like staff principal, once I get to staff or principal level, I'll definitely give you the answer.
He'll come back and let you know.
There'll be like, screen interview with staff engineer.
Yeah. Bricks TV. Why use HTML5 when you have React and others like it?
In React, you kind of use HTML5, no?
Well, you have JSX, which is...
Yeah, but that is kind of Yeah, okay, it's not pure HTML5, but knowing HTML5 definitely helps.
I think that's the thing. If you didn't know HTML5 to begin with,
then
it would be pretty tricky to understand React.
Yeah. So I think you need to know.
You need JS first before you learn React, because otherwise it's just a complete nightmare to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, it's like, that, I think it's a Pokemon meme when, like somebody is joining like this way and this way or something. I think it's like HTML, JavaScript, and then you get React. I think you need to know both to make the next step to React.
Or maybe Brooks TV is asking, why would you build something with HTML and JS instead of React? Or would you actually do that?
Yeah. Oh, it's a simple page. Why overcomplicate it? If you can just write, I mean, you see, the problem with React is that you build React, but it's not, you don't ship React into your browser, right? It's when you load the page, it's HTML, CSS, JavaScript still. So, if it's a relatively small and simple project, or, super high speed is incredibly important, like sub-milliseconds, then you actually have just HTML, just CSS, just JavaScript, just put it out there.
Struggling to imagine a project that would need to be that fast, but could run on only HTML, CSS, and JS.
Yeah. or okay, well, there you go.
I guess.
Look, there is, for example, you work for some really obscure defense company that still runs Internet Explorer 6. There you go, done. You'll have to write stuff in HTML5.
Dave Collison, how do you? Says, React compiles to HTML. It's a JavaScript framework, not an HTML library.
Yes.
Did you call it an HTML library?
No, I think it's like, combination of HTML and JavaScript at the same time. Yeah. Well, again, it's like, is it a library? Is it a framework?
Oh, this question again.
There is. I don't know. I don't know. And yes, you can basically a lot, like, for example, you can have like Gatsby, frameworks like Gatsby. What they do is they precompile all of that React into HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So when you're actually requesting stuff, it's already precompiled. Again, a lot of the solutions have their pros, have their cons. It all depends. If I have to think of a theoretical example when I would use HTML5, yeah, kind of like, as I said, actually, there you go. Email templates.
Yeah, use nothing but HTML5 for that.
I don't think you can. Yeah. I don't think you can code I don't think you can code that in React. Well, yet. Yes. So there you go. That's why.
Lovely. Keep the questions coming. We still have around 25 minutes left to answer as many questions as possible. Andrea, could you explain the difference between front-end developer roles versus web developer roles?
Interesting.
I see that the skills from the front-end path could be applicable to both.
Yeah, exactly. You can be a front-end developer. You can be software engineer. A lot of companies hire, for example, they hire full stack, or they hire just software engineer. That's it. Actually, most of the jobs I've been hired for were just software engineer. And sometimes you have to do front-end, sometimes you have to do back-end, sometimes, you basically you write code. That's all there is.
This is the career path.
Yes.
We're talking about. Teaches you everything you need to know to become a front-end developer or a web developer. But is the main difference not just that the web developer builds websites, but then a front-end developer kind of does that as well? I'm not sure there is a huge difference.
I don't think there is a huge difference. And to be fair, like, if you have to also put the difference between a web developer, software engineer, again, there probably wouldn't be that much of a difference. Because I feel like if somebody says web developer, it would also presume that you will have to do a little bit of backend.
Yeah, true.
Like write APIs and stuff like that.
So it's worth, when you're looking for jobs, to search for both terms, I think.
Yes. But if the job says front end or back end, the focus will just be on that. While with web or software engineer, you don't know. Which is why, for example, if you look for a job like full stack, they are very upfront that you will do both.
Yes. Staying on the topic of Scrimba's front-end developer career path.
Yeah.
Food Tech Life says, do you think it's worth reading eloquent JavaScript very famous book, if you've gone through the JS modules on Scrimba. You've got this book.
Eloquent JavaScript. Yes, I do. Very good.
Is it worth reading that additionally
To
doing the stuff on here?
Yeah, I would say that a book kind of goes into a little bit more detail. I think you will learn internals about JavaScript a little bit more. While Scrimba Frontend Career Path will give you a lot of experience of like building stuff and doing much more applicably, a book, there's always the difference between learning about something and doing it. And obviously the book does give you examples of things you can do. But like when you read a book and they give you an exercise to do, you're like, oh, I have to do so much work to set it all up to make sure that I can start doing the exercise, that most people just kind of abandon exercises.
Kind of sounds like you're saying it's not worth reading it then.
No, I would say it's worth reading for the knowledge that's in the book rather than the exercise. You can apply the knowledge in lots of other cases.
Okay, lovely. Matt Plunkett, would you say software developer apprenticeships or perhaps internships, similar thing,
Yes.
are worth it? Or is it better to carry on self-teaching and applying for junior roles?
So I would say it depends where you are personally. So are you a high school student or are you at university and this is your first internship or apprenticeship? If that is the case, then I think it is worth it. If you have already worked, you're switching careers, I don't think it's worth it, because apprenticeships, at least in the UK, they mean a very specific thing, so you will not be paid very much. And it's there to teach people job skills, so you can onboard to a job. But if you have already had a career, then you don't really need to learn that. You've already done it. So I would suggest, if you're a career switcher, definitely do look for junior jobs. Don't spend your time on apprenticeships. But if you're like 16, 17 or 18, or you're like still at uni, early 20s, sure, go for it, because that apprenticeship internship will give you some time, maybe during the summer or something, you can study up or you can work and get that job experience. Yeah, it'll be helpful.
Good, thank you. Any courses or resources to dive deeper into system design, asks Prince.
Yes, so actually very easily, it's called Byte.
Wrong byte.
Byte Go. Yeah.
Okay.
So there you go.
Oh.
Byte Go is the really good resource. It could be a little bit intimidating because, I don't know, I actually don't think it would be very intimidating. But it's somewhat on the deep end. So you will go straight into system design and actually, on very applicable things like, here is this product or here is that product. Like, for example, if you click on like YouTube, so how do you design YouTube? And then they basically walk you through chapter by chapter of like, what do you need to do, how to go through it. And also what is really good is that it's also formulated in a way of system design interview. So these are all the things that you would need to tick off during that interview. So you would say, what's the demand for this service? Like, what can we build? If there is only one user, then, put it on a server and that's it. Be done with it. If it's a lot of users, you will be learning load balancers, queues, all sorts of different tools.
Maybe rate limiting?
Yeah, there you go. So
cool.
And it goes like from design fundamentals of the building blocks of different systems. And then it will say, okay, now we can put all of those different building blocks into how do we design products that we're already familiar with. So yeah, I would highly recommend. And there is a book as well that goes with the resource. There is also a newsletter that I would say weekly you receive really good, packed ideas about how different products work, how different things work in general.
Oh, this
Yeah.
newsletter, presumably.
Yes.
Bite Go newsletter.
Yes.
There we go. Hope that helps you out, Prince. Good question.
There you go. Yeah, enjoy. I would say that this is probably the only thing that you'll need.
Good to know. Ilya, what do you think sets successful tech companies apart from those that struggle? And how can individuals contribute to that success?
So to the first part, if I knew that, I would probably be the best angel investor in the world. So I don't think I know that. I don't know. I can't answer that question. And I don't think. Yeah, and I don't think. I mean, a lot of investment companies probably know the answer to a question, or like for example, Y Combinator kind of tells that they might have a better idea what it means. But again, I'm not experienced enough to be able to discern these things. So I'll pass on the first part straight up. How can individuals contribute to the success of the company? I think that's when we spoke earlier. Sometimes you have very limited visibility to your part and where it fits in within the larger picture. So striving to learn how to understand the bigger picture of where you operate is very important. So you as an individual should probably try to, again, like maybe as a junior, it would be far above your pay grade to worry about that kind of thing. But as you progress through a career, I think it's very important to learn this thing early on. So like maybe it would be a bit of an overkill as a junior, or like when somebody gives you a ticket and you ask, does this make my department, my function, my company be better at whatever we think as the company? And maybe that will help you stay on track. Like, for example, your CEO might say, we need to increase sales. So like increased sales should be the priority for our company. Mm-hmm. So then you can be saying like, so maybe fixing this bug will help sales team to, like maybe they will put an edge over a competitor or something. And you can say, okay, I think fixing this bug is more important than fixing this bug that is not as impactful. So once you keep in mind your focus on the things that matter to your company as well, I think that will set you apart as well.
This goes back to the thing about asking, does it make sense that we're doing this?
Yeah. And if you don't know, well, what does my company actually value? Well, it's quite likely that during the interview process, your company had something like company values that everyone thinks is a lot of trash. And in big companies, it might be, but a lot of companies are quite famous for trying to uphold these standards. So maybe that can be a very easy way. But also, what does your manager say? Because ultimately, like, yes, CEO is important, but also your manager is probably trying to do the same thing. So it's like, on a smaller level, try to help your manager be successful.
Yeah, because you might have a different viewpoint on things than they do. So something might seem like a good idea to them, but perhaps you're closer to the customers, for example. So you can see that actually it's completely pointless. Yeah. So if you believe that, then raise it. I'm not saying be argumentative about literally everything because that's a pain. But if you feel in your gut that this isn't the way to go, I think it's useful to raise it.
Yeah, it works both ways. Like your manager has visibility that you don't have, but also because you can be right in there, like really close to some other aspect that they might not be aware of. You can contribute back into that vision. Just make sure that so you all move not as individuals, but as a team together towards something.
Because the last thing you want is to do a load of work which you believe from the start is pointless, then it does turn out to be pointless. And then someone says, well, you must have known this. Why didn't you say anything?
Yeah, exactly.
So never be afraid to speak up. Moral of the story.
Yeah.
Pele again. As a senior developer, how do you approach mentoring and leading junior team members? What qualities do you look for in a mentee?
Ooh, interesting. So how do I approach mentoring and leading junior team members? I would say patience is very important. And also you need to be patient and understanding, because you probably can remember how you felt when you were junior. And so like everything you say can be considered as law. You know, you can't just joke and say like, oh yeah, just do X, Y, Z, because to them that might not be a joke. They might not understand it. So you have to be very explicit about what you expect and what you don't expect. And also because a lot of juniors look up to you as their mentor, you need to kind of hold yourself to higher standard as well. So, you know, you need to lead by example. So in that way, I would say these are probably the main important things. Like you lead by example and you deal with great patience and care for your mentee. But again, that does not mean that you can, you know, if somebody does something wrong, you need to be very gentle but firm in pointing out that something else is expected. And again, try probably avoid, you know, bird feeding, that kind of thing. Like try to give people enough space to make their mistakes and learn from them. So you're not particularly an overbearing mentor.
And how can people ensure that they're good mentees?
Ooh, that's interesting. It's like I remember this concept of learn how to manage your manager. I think that is, you know, prepare for meetings on your side. You know, like for example, if there is a review, collect everything you've done. You know, try to be really organized. So it's way easier for me to help you. So as a mentee, what you can do is instead of telling me, oh, this feature doesn't work, or oh, this ticket, I can't do this ticket. Probably instead of doing that, you should try to be super specific about what exactly you're struggling with.
What doesn't work, what you've tried.
And like, yeah, what have you tried, the reproduction, and what you're expecting. And once that is like, you know, basically, ideally, you point me to the line of code that doesn't work with exact error, and I have all the context for the problem, and then we can just sit down and work through it together.
Okay, thank you. We have 10 minutes left and about 10 questions. So we're going to do a quick fire round. Try to answer the following questions in one sentence or less.
Cool. Oh, yes. Wow, that might be tricky.
Mohammed, what is the one skill that senior developer has that junior doesn't?
What's one skill that senior developer have that junior? Whew. It's more than one, unfortunately. It's more than one, but I suppose the most important one is senior developers can, well, again, because of experience, they can just tell which things they can do that are much more impactful. So, yeah, seniors would write much less code for the same, you know, bang for the buck. And for seniors, that bang for the buck is much larger than for juniors because, again, because you don't have much experience, it's a little bit harder to assess what things are important and what things aren't important.
Thank you.
Again, that's not one sentence.
Bricks TV, should you freelance or get a job first?
Okay, personally, job first. But if you are entrepreneurially minded, then go for freelance.
Yeah. Like that person who coded Wordle. You know, if you've got an idea like that, do it.
He actually works for Reddit. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Mel W, would you say there's a personality trait that is really suitable or not suitable, perhaps one of each, to be a programmer?
I actually don't know. No, I would. Yeah, I don't know. It's like what personality trait is suitable or not suitable to be a writer, or you know, to be a doctor, or
takes all sorts, I think.
Yeah, to be a bus driver. I don't know. Like I met all sorts of different software engineers, so it's honestly it's really hard to tell.
I guess if you hate computers, it might not be the route for you.
I mean, to be fair, it probably could be pretty good because again, you know, you will make sure that, you know, like a lot of people create apps that are like really flowery and stuff like that. But oftentimes, you know, if I go to Skyscanner, I want to book a ticket, you know, not watch your animations. So in a way, if you hate computers, you'll just make sure that it's like the
You do.
absolute minimum amount to get stuff done. So maybe there is a benefit to that as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Himanshu, can you please recommend some professional level React projects that one college student can do to enhance their CV?
Ooh, interesting. Professional level React project. I mean, look, as a college student, what problem do you have? You know,
Or just as a person.
Yeah, or as a person, or like what problem do your parents have? Solve that problem with an app. There you go, done.
Build something that solves the problem you have, because then, well, one, you've solved your problem, and two, it's nice and easy to talk about it, and it's probably something that doesn't already exist. Otherwise, you wouldn't have the problem.
Could be, yeah.
So it'll be a unique project for you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like maybe your professor emails you essays all the time, and they have never heard of something like Dropbox. You know, build a Dropbox for them. There you go. That like one idea, or maybe a recipe catalog for your mum's cooking or something like that. I don't know, anything.
Yeah. Devil, when do you feel ready to apply for jobs? I feel like I'm never ready enough.
I think when you ask, I always say when you ask that question, you're ready. Apply sooner. So you learn the pain of rejection. That's good. And second,
or maybe not.
Or maybe not. Yeah, maybe you're good enough that you will get the first one. So and also you will learn interviewing. The sooner you learn interviewing, the higher the chance that when you come across your dream job, you will not utterly bomb that interview. But again, I don't think there are such thing as dream jobs. So don't get hung up on finding the one.
Yeah, that's true. I agree. Start applying as soon as you're asking that question, because at worst, you won't get the jobs you apply for. But what you might get if you get rejected is insight into what it is you need to do to be more successful next time. Yes. Good luck anyway. Live emulator. As a new developer, what's the ideal page count for a resume? 1.
Yeah, 1. Well, again, it depends. 1 to 2, probably.
2 absolute max. I would try to keep it.
Yeah, not more than 2. 2 if you're a career switcher. But if you're straight out of university, keep it to 1. Yeah.
And if you're a career switcher, make sure you're only including experience which is relevant. So it doesn't have to be coding experience, but you need to be able to relate what you did in previous jobs to coding. So if you had a job as a football mascot, for example, that might not be relevant. Or it might be. Who knows? As long as you can relate it back, put it on. If not, leave it off. Yeah,
if it's like designing, I don't know, entertainment systems for the stadiums, well, you can probably try to...
That is a good point, actually.
Think of a way to relate that.
If you're a career switcher, one tip we have is to look into your industry that you already have knowledge of and try to get into software engineering there. So if you've been a teacher, look at EdTech, for example.
Or if you're still watching is it car manufacturing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, maybe for like you have been making cars, and now you can actually fix the terrible infotainment systems that are in modern cars. Yeah. I am totally not talking about my own problem right now.
Okay. Is there any insider news on the full stack course being developed by Scrimba?
Well,
nothing solid.
No.
It is coming this year, though.
That one is easy to answer with one question, one sentence.
Yes.
Yes.
Keep your eyes on scrimba.com and your emails. How important is it to know TypeScript and or software testing for building a skill set for junior front-end developers?
I think if you apply for a junior job and you know TypeScript and you can tell me about software testing, I think that sets you apart very strongly. Yeah.
Good stuff. Yes. Is there any project in your work, says Chan, that doesn't have unit testing?
A project in my work that doesn't have unit testing? No.
So you always use unit testing?
We use all sorts of testing. We do not have a single project that would not have tests. think it's like even a company policy that things have to be tested. So
if you're interested in learning unit testing, we have a course right here on Screamer.
Yeah.
Lovely. Let's finish with a question from Ali Sajjad. What is the most difficult thing for junior developers in the first weeks of working? And how can you overcome that, I would add?
Probably setting up your environment.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, probably setting up your environment, and because you have never been introduced to a large project before in your life, that might be tricky. And I would say that maybe it's hard to do something like that. But I would say try to go online, try to go to GitHub and find an open source application. You know, probably just Google, popular open source apps, and then try to find out how to set it up on your local computer. I think that would be a very good exercise that will give you an idea into how to actually do it. The amount of problems you will face might be so large and it might feel totally horrible, but it will be very much similar. I remember the first job I ever joined and I had to set up the environment, and I have never done it before in my life. It was awful.
Yeah.
And also learn how to set up GitHub SSH keys.
Yeah, good call.
Yeah, that will save you on your first job, that will save you a day. So learn it now.
More importantly, it will save you a lot of stress.
Yes.
If you've at least seen this process before and you have a vague idea of what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
That is an excellent tip.
I think Michael Limber says, locating good coffee machines.
We're both clicking it.
Yeah, we're both clicking it at the same time. Locating the best coffee machine. That could be tricky, yeah.
Important task.
Yeah, that could be tricky.
Yes. Lovely. Thank you for all your wonderful questions. That's all we have time for at the moment. This
oh my God.
is what's coming up on the next Scrimba live stream, because it's happening on May the 4th, which you may or may not know is Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you and all that.
Right.
So we are doing a Star Wars themed stream, a step-by-step guide to building a movie selector app. So I hope you can join us for that. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, right. Nice. Is it Roku?
Roku made this thumbnail.
Yeah, well, congrats.
Under my instruction.
Yeah, well done.
Well, actually, my instruction was that I would be Leia and you would be Chewie. But he made you Han Solo instead.
Fair enough. I think that he could probably find a picture where it was just Chewie and Leia on their own.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
Yeah, I think that would be quite tricky.
Yeah. Who does these thumbnails? They deserve a raise. His name
Roku.
is Roku.
Roku is really good.
He was on the live stream once.
Yeah.
Yes. Cool. Any closing thoughts to budding developers, Michael?
Have a great rest of your week and have fun. Happy coding.
Totally. Yes, and best of luck with whatever it is you're hoping to achieve this week and in general. Catch you later.